Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you would like some additional live streams, 2 bonus live streams per month, if you'd like access to my exclusive Discord server where we share artwork, give each other feedback, exchange ideas, if you'd like to be able to read my comic books for free online, become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. There's links in the description. Head on over there, and for as little as $2 a month, you get access to all that and more. If you would like to receive a free digital sketchbook, get work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your email inbox, and get blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, things that are inspiring me creatively, sign up for my free monthly newsletter. That's at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comics, or if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can head over to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It's a self-contained psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. Or you can pick up my most recent project, Morningstar. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series broken into 2 volumes. Volume 1 has issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 has issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character sketches, page layouts, script excerpts. Basically, I show you how I put the whole comics together. You get all of those at amazon.jeremy.net. Follow the links in the description. Okay. Here we go. Let's see. And I see we've already got some comments. We've got Salazar Art Nation in the chat. How you doing, Frank? Says, nice to see you streaming here again. Came by to say happy birthday. Yes, today is my birthday. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And let's see here. Frank says, if you want to get Jeremy a stand for his camera, join the Patreon. That's a good point. Well, you know what's funny? I really should have a list of things that I do want to get extra equipment for the Patreon. So far, I've been using when I want to have a camera above my drawing table. I've got like a little swivel arm over here on the desk. But I think I've been enjoying live streaming directly from the tablet, which is the reason why I've been doing more digital work these days. But I was just thinking today that I could do some figure drawing because I have a bunch of work from my figure drawing class that I do need to revisit and analyze. But I thought, I've been making a lot of progress on this Medusa piece, so I kind of wanted to keep going with that. Now, I will tell you, I got in here, before we started, I was sketching in loosely some of the lighting on the statue. I'm going to come in here and lighten up the line artwork, or change the color of it to make it I don't know, maybe like a dark blue, kind of a navy colored line work instead of black. However, in looking at this, I was thinking to myself, I noticed that the texture that I put in, not texture, but the brush that I used to paint in these highlights, he looks a little bit like Iceman. And I was thinking about instead switching to a brush that has some texture to it, to hopefully get that gritty sense that it's stone. So I'm going to play around with a couple of brushes till I find one I like. And then I'm going to erase the texture that's in here now and just redo it with some new texture with a new brush. And so far, this first brush that I tried, the Peppermint Brush, this seems to have a nice texture to it. It takes a little while to build up. See, what I want is something that has the hard edge of the studio pen, but also has a texture to it. And maybe that brush is this Jansen inker brush that I've been using. Let's see, bring the size down a little bit. That's got a little bit of an edge to it. Let's see here. Maybe this Vine charcoal brush. Again, softer than I would like. And I think that's the challenge I'm having, is finding a brush that has both the texture, but also has a hard edge to it. Let's give this a try. See how this brush works. And in erasing, I just deselected my selection, so I got to reselect that again. Let's see here, save and load. There we go. The last thing I want is to be doing a mass erasure like that, clearing a section, and then just lose all of the rendering I've done across the page, because I have all of the total rendering on one layer. So let's see here. Maybe bring the opacity down and the brush size up. Bring the opacity up a little bit more. The brush size down a little bit more. You know what? I think I can do that just full on. Okay. Let's try this. This particular brush has more of a build-up to it naturally built in. Whereas with the studio pen, it's like kind of using a bright marker that gives me this really hard line. But this, I can softly build things up in it. It might mean that I'll have to come back and kind of sculpt the harder edges and angles I want in with the eraser. Let's see here. Thank you, Amar. Amar says, happy Sunday and Born Day or Earth Rotation Day. Greatly appreciated. How you doing, Martin? I see Martin's in here. Hey, hey, hey. How you doing? Thank you, everybody, for showing up. So we are just adding some textured highlights now to the male statue. Well, there's no female statue. It's just the male here anyway, but it's interesting because I like the texture, but I feel like I'm losing something in not having that hard edge that the studio pen gave me. So I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is coming in here with the eraser and doing it on the top end, so that at the top end of each of these forms that I'm lighting, on the edge that's closest to the light source, I'm going to come in there with the eraser and just give it a hard line. Because the first shadows that I was painting on here, the first tones, were a little too much like Iceman, like a little too blocky. This is a little too round because I kind of want that blocky shape to differentiate between the rendering of the Medusa's skin tone, which is softer. And this is turning out softer than I would like. You know, and even looking at this brush now, I'm like, this brush still does not have as much texture as I would like. It's not random enough. And if you look at it from a distance, it doesn't really like scream texture. And let's see here. NMN is here. Says hey Jeremy, happy birthday. Guess sip some Bacardi like it's your birthday. Yeah, well, so far I'm sipping decaf coffee like it's my birthday. Um, but we'll pretend it's Bacardi. And let's see here. Salazar Art Nation says, "Is this on an iPad?" Yes, it is. And he says, "I've never had feelings for Medusa before." Well, that's what I was going for. I'm trying to create this sense of intimacy. You know, I like the doing art or making. I like creating things that have conflicting ideas or images. We usually just think of Medusa as a scary ass villain, and I like the idea of taking something that you would normally be afraid of and trying to create a sense of intimacy there. So anyway, I erased all those that lighting that I put in there before. I'm still not happy with the brush that I chose. And sometimes it happens where I go in and I start working a little bit before I realize I am not happy with something. And I think I just want a brush that has a larger texture, like this grunge brush. This might be the jam. We'll see. This doesn't even look particularly grungy. Oh wait, that's because it didn't pick the grunge brush. That's still on the vine charcoal. Here we go. Make this a little bit larger. Okay, that I think is closer to what I'm looking for. So if I can take this brush and actually, if I can do it at, no, I don't want to do it at full opacity because I still need to have a little bit of variance in the lighting. But if I can take this brush and then come back and erase out some hard edges out of it, then I think we might be in business. And it just feels a little bit chunkier, which is kind of what I was hoping for. Let's see, my buddy Josh is in the on the Facebook stream. He says, "Looks great, thank you, Josh." I've been on a serious Medusa jag lately, and it's good to see you. We definitely need to figure out a time to hang and catch up. It's been a hot minute. Um, but yeah, I've been on a serious Medusa jag with these. And as you guys who have been watching the live stream know, I've got several more on deck beyond this. Who knows? I might put out a whole art book that's just Medusa themed. I'm gonna go larger with this brush and then just erase out what I need. Because I think that that's the thing that keeps me erasing over and over again is that I'm not seeing the texture in this. And you only really see it when I go very, very large with the brush. So I'm gonna go large brush and then just erase out what I need here. All right. So from here, I think I can come in and start erasing. And I'm going to change pace here, and I'm going to erase using this Jansen ink now because that thing's a little bit too unpredictable. I really like that brush, but it's very unpredictable. You know what? Screw it. Let's stick with the studio pen. So now it's going to be more of just shaping this so that it gives you kind of a sculpted feel. Bring the opacity down to 50%. That way I can kind of do this in passes. And I'm just shaving a little bit off of the top edge so that you get that sense of the light going around the edge of the form. And that the lightest part isn't all the way at the very top edge, but that you get that sense that part of this form is turning away from you. Erase a little bit out of this area where I'm going to add some dark lines, some shadow area. It's coming along. Let me fill a little bit of this back in, a little bit too far, removing too much there. It's hard to find just the right balance. In fact, that struggle to find the right balance between how much to add and remove, that's what, to me, makes this so interesting. Maybe I'm looking at it too closely. I realize as I'm drawing this, a lot of times in order to get a little perspective, I will zoom out I'll look at the piece, kind of tiny, and get a sense. But I realize that even when I'm just sitting here in front of the physical device, that it helps if I just lean back a little bit to get just a little perspective on what I'm doing. Try using the smudge tool there, but that is not giving me what I want. All right. I think part of the challenge here is getting just the right amount of detail, in that you can put so much detail in a piece that at a certain point it starts to become cluttered. And I do not want it to feel cluttered. So it's a matter of sort of like pulling out areas, leaving just enough detail to move the eye through the figure. I'm not sure at what point I want to come back in here and add the areas that are going to be shadow. There's a, let's see, where is it? So the thumbnail I have in here, you can see there's this darker blue color. And I want to use that for the shadow areas within the sculpture, and possibly also change all of his line work to that color as well. I haven't decided yet whether I want to do that or not, but hell, if I had it all planned out, there'd be no pleasant surprises in the process. Although to some degree, I know myself, I'm neurotic enough that I'd be okay with there being no pleasant surprises and just doing the whole thing paint by numbers according to a plan that I've worked out previously. But I'm trying to be more open as I make these things and just see what happens. I mean, who says you can't have happy accidents working digitally? You very much can. Sometimes it's just a matter of turning off a layer and being like, oh, hey, I didn't expect that. It's too much off the top. So you give it a tiny little edge. That's too much. Maybe opacity down and sort of round it that way. That's a little better. Now let's see what's going on with this guy's face. Now this I've already kind of got marked out with the line art. I was wondering why this was taking such a long time to erase because I had it set on low opacity. I thought I had it set on low brush size. I think the thing that I'm trying to figure out for the face here is how much of the region, how much of this area do I want to just erase the areas where I'm going to come in with a darker blue for shadow, and how much do I actually need to cut out to show sort of a difference between the midtones and the shadow tones. I don't quite know yet. I guess what I'm really saying is I need to figure out how much of what's in here is going to be actual genuine highlight. What helps me sometimes in figuring those kind of things out is to kind of try and treat the highlight as though it's a little balloon that I'm lassoing inside of the structure. Let's see here. Corvus is in the chat. Huh. Looks like he had some good news. Says those SD cards you lost the other day, found them underneath the car. Happy to hear that. That's always good when you recover some lost photography or lost artwork. Whenever you have files that you think are gone to the universe, it's nice to rediscover. Let's see here. Martin says, maybe if you pockmark the shadows on him, he'll look more like stone. Just an idea. Well, you know what? That is a good idea. That's one of the reasons why I went in here with a texture brush for the stone. But I'm going to use that same texture brush when I paint in those darker blues. That's what I'm going to use for my my shadow color. But I'm going to try and place them in such a way that they'll be in kind of the edge of where it goes from shadow to halftone. Because one of the things I've learned in terms of looking at like old masters and looking at you know, older paintings is that the detail really tends to be in kind of the halftone. There's not a lot of detail, or there's not as much detail in the highlight because it's a little bit blown out light-wise. And there's not a lot of detail in shadow because detail really exists where there is light. So, you know, if it's a shadow area, then you're you know, there's not so much light. There's not, you know, there's no light. There's no detail. You can do detail in the shadow, but that's more of, I think, a creative choice than it is just, oh, these shadows are rich and full of detail. But the halftones, that seems to be where the colors are the most vivid. Well, the colors are most vivid as the detail tends to be where the halftone starts turning to shadow, kind of like right in the middle of the halftone. The vividness tends to be as the halftone starts to turn to highlight. It's where colors seem to get very bright. But I mean, that's what I seem to observe when I look at art. Lord knows I'm always discovering things and finding out that there's stuff that I believe for years. I'm like, oh wait, that's not how it is at all. So it's definitely worth taking with a grain of salt and doing your own observations of both reality and old master paintings, because there's a lot to learn from both. Particularly because when you look at reality and then you look at like the work of the old masters and you start seeing why they leave certain things out, things that really would be there if you saw the thing in real life, but those things would be distracting. I think now I will go back to my favorite studio pen to add in just a little bit of detail here and there around the eye. This is just to kind of fill out these shapes, give them a little bit of volume by emphasizing these areas where forms are going to be turning towards the light. Let's go sideways for a second. It's weird because it's kind of like a weird inception thing. As I turn to the side, I kind of have to mentally keep in check where the light's coming from, because now at this angle, the light is coming from below. This is one of those things where it's handy drawing something upside down to help you just view the volumes from a different perspective. Let's see, Jay King is in the chat, says what's good. Chugging along here, rendering me some Medusa. Well, rendering some stone rather. Bump that opacity up a little bit. Probably more detail in this guy's face than in the rest of the piece. which is something that is worth me zooming out and taking a look at, because I don't want his face to really jump out and overtake the everything that's going on in the rest of the piece. And that's something you have to remember when you're drawing or adding detail, is that the eye is attracted to it. So don't put detail in unless you want people to look at something. Yeah, that's a little much. I'm gonna put the eraser on a really low opacity and just bring all of it down just a little bit. Just a light reduction of how much it stands out. And as I look at this shadow here, I think I realize that I'm getting too caught up in shadow shapes, and that this was really intended to be the bulging of the cheekbone. So it was going to be light, and then it's just a thin line of shadow instead of the big, large mass of shadow that I drew in there. I think that feels a little bit more volumetric and filled out. Yeah, it's a little better. A little better. Let's see here. Chunks of light in the hair, just areas that are facing the light more. Not a lot, just a little bit. So let's see how this looks if I go in and start painting some shadow shapes in there. So all I've been doing through this entire process is going back to my thumbnail and then just color picking directly from the thumbnail. And so far, I've been pretty happy with the color choices. If it turns out that there's a point where I need to go back and adjust the color choices, then I will do so. Let's see here. Let me erase out. Gotta go back down to the tones layer. So this is going to get tricky because I'm going to be going back and forth between the tones layer and this shadow layer. And that's the kind of thing that gets me in trouble, where I end up drawing on the wrong layer. Let's go back into the shadow layer, and hopefully I can just stick with this. Let's see. And really, this is just a darker blue. Instead of the blue that is the base color of the statue. Part of me says I should just put this in full opacity and then come back. Actually, you know what? Maybe I should. Let's just go full opacity, fully opaque, and then I can come back in and erase on a low opacity on places where I feel like I need to lighten up this shadow or any of these shadows. Because otherwise it means I'm going to spend more time building up for each shape, doing multiple passes on it. Which, sure, that's kind of a more sculptural drawing process, but I've been working very directly in a very flat color mode. So why not just continue with that? In fact, I might end up these lines, these areas where I am drawing in these shadow shapes, I might just come in and remove the line work instead of changing the color of it. And just let the shadows themselves, sort of the shapes of these shadows, do the defining instead of the line art. Yeah, I think I may definitely have to remove the line art because looking at this right now, with the lines surrounding it, surrounding each of these shapes, it just stands out so much more than I want it to. I'm either going to remove the line art or I'm just going to recolor it to the same color as these shapes that I'm filling in. Whew. I don't know. Do you guys spin your pages when you're working to give you better access to the lines you want to make? It's a habit that I got into. Carl Altstetter, good friend of mine, showed me that approach in terms of inking, not just moving the page around, so you can use the natural arc that your hand makes when it moves, when it draws, to get crisper, more fluid lines, just smoother lines. And considering how easy it is to rotate work while you're drawing digitally, it's something that has also ended up playing into my digital painting process as well. I just treat it like an extension of drawing. So I don't like the fact that I have filled in this whole region between the neck, basically his upper pecs area. So I need to decide what part of it I want to have light in, have light show through. Something like this, I think maybe works. Well, if I'm going to have it this deep in here, I have to do that lighter. Dropping the opacity down to really get just like a subtle amount that I'm showing. Because again, it's in the shadow, so there should be less detail here. And I'm also wondering if I should just have a full-on bold strip of shadow running along this inside form. Inside of the bicep here. I don't know. Feels like it might call too much attention to itself. That's another thing about this whole trying to balance the values is that's too light. Bring that up to about 50%. You know what? I think that needs to be soft. And switch from the studio pen to a soft brush. Bring the size. And we can just kind of ease this in. So I'm playing this kind of like weird ballet, this weird dance between wanting to have hard shapes in here to make the stone feel more stone-like, but then also wanting to come in here and softly make some soft transitions around grounded forms. So I'm like kind of trying to have my cake and eat it too with this rendering, which is a tricky proposition. Let's see what happens if we come in here and at the brow, I just fill all of this in and then just sort of erase out with that soft brush again. I feel a sneeze coming on. I guess it's waiting for me till I'm not expecting it. And now, what's something you might find a little bit unexpected is instead of coming in here and erasing out from the light side where the light's coming from, I'm going to erase from the shadow side to kind of give that feeling that it's reflected light, light that's shining down and hitting somewhere behind the tentacle or the serpent and reflecting back. Probably erased out a little too much. Stepping that back a bit. Yeah, this is another one of those things where it's like that tension that I mentioned between rendering something so it feels like what it's supposed to be versus putting too much detail in there. Because definitely the face is a place where we expect to have detail, but I almost feel like it's better to let the face fall to a certain degree into shadow, particularly given that it's supposed to be a face that's been turned to stone. So there should be a certain lack of animation to it. I hope I'm not making you seasick with the constant zooming in, zooming out, but it just helps me kind of see where I am, what I'm going for, what I should be going for, where to make adjustments. Probably better to erase out this little bit that I've got right in here. And also give this a little bit of the furrow of the brow, have a little bit of light peek out of that. Actually, you know what? Nah, that reads better in shadow completely. Now, let me bring the opacity down somewhat. And then just lightly pull some of this shadow back. Just less shadow. Not removing it completely, but just less. It doesn't need to be as pronounced. And then I can kind of go in here with a solid brush and a dark opacity, and I can add some of those pock marks that Martin was talking about. And again, this is that kind of thing like the splatter technique where you can go in with a toothbrush and just put marks all over the place. But I feel like doing it individually by hand as opposed to just dragging a brush across that leaves a spray makes me very judicious about not overusing the technique. Because that spray paint that paintbrush technique, the toothbrush technique, where you take you just pour a few drops of ink on a toothbrush, and then you run your thumb over it and flick it. You do that over almost any ink drawing. You're like, oh man, that looks cool. I'm hesitant to use too much of those kind of effects because, yeah, they look cool, but it's kind of a trap because you can use it to hide the fact that the drawing underneath may not be as good as it could be. But if you've got that effect on there, people respond to that effect. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't use it at all, but I found that I was using it wrong. I was using it as a crutch to hide places where the drawing was not that good. So what I go for instead is I genuinely try to only use those effects when I'm really, really confident in how well the drawing came out. And in something like this, I'm more concerned with as opposed to making a cool spray effect, just looking at it and saying, is this drawing capturing everything that I wanted to capture? And having super cool effects on top can kind of take away from that. It's supposed to me just coming in here and just dot, dot, dot here and there and saying, all right, it means that I'm very much more likely to only put in what's absolutely necessary as opposed to flooding it with those dots. And this is something that may change as I continue to make art. There may be a point where I just don't care and I will just be like, there, spray texture, move on. Now let's see about the line art. So I'm going to tweak the line art a little bit here. And then I think we're going to call it a day because we're at about an hour. So let's see what happens if I take this selection that I have. Let's turn, first off, let's rename this line art. Not loan art, line art. Okay, let's turn all of these other layers off for a minute. And what I'm going to do is go in here with the freehand lasso, and I'm just going to expand to make sure that I get all of the stone. Because when I made these selections, I kind of made them on the inside, like running right through the center of the line, as opposed to capturing all of the line. Because for the most part, I want the places where I want the seams between the line and the color to be hidden, or I want the seams between different areas of color to be hidden by the line. And actually, here's a place where I want to remove some of this. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy paste an area of the line art to do a color hold on. A color hold being where you take the line and you change the color of it. Make sure I get this little piece here because it looks like there's a little bit of selection that somehow I didn't get. No, that's just how I drew it. All right. So be it then. There's one thing that is kind of a pain in the ass about Procreate is that sometimes it will just stop making a selection when you were in the middle of making a selection. You're like, what are you doing here? I'm trying to get all of this, and you're just cutting off my selections. I don't like my selections cut off. Make sure I remove all of the serpent line art. Well, that thing I was just bitching about, I think the reason for that is simply if I make the 2 points that I'm selecting too close together, it will just presume that I'm done with those selections. Now, I will tell you that this may well be one of the least interesting phases of working on a piece because all you're doing is watching me lasso stuff, and that's not exciting. But sometimes in order to get the good stuff, you got to go through the not exciting stuff. And the selections as I have them now require me to go through and add all of this stuff on and remove areas where I'm not going to want to color a particular part of the line. This is an interesting conundrum. The serpent that's wrapping around the neck. I think I actually don't want to include that, and I want to keep that as part of the serpent's color, which means this line is going to change as it gets up here, wrapping around his throat. This is one of those where as I do it, as I make these selections, it's very possible that I'm going to come back there and be like, I'm going to need to grab some more areas that I didn't get the first time. And the other thing I could do is just duplicate the line art and just erase big chunks of it. But I don't feel like that would be much different at all from what I'm doing right now. Little tiny wedge of line here that I want to make sure gets removed. And for the most part, you guys wouldn't even notice this. But it's one of those things where perfectionist that I am, or I wouldn't say perfectionist, but obsessive that I am, it'll drive me nuts. So I'm going to copy paste. And now I can turn on my light and shadow layers. And let's see what happens if I start changing the color of this. There we go. Now let's see what happens if we go slightly darker, because he does look like ice right now. Hey, looks like I got a birthday gift. 47ness says, happy birthday. Enjoy your level up. Gave a super chat. Says, haven't been able to tune in for a while. Yeah, let me throw that up there. So thank you. That is a wonderful birthday surprise. I greatly appreciate it. I don't mention enough that super chats are available on the live stream. They definitely are. So anytime anyone wants to throw a few bucks my way, I'm happy to receive it. Thank you. I need to make that part of my opening introduction to mention that super chats are available and appreciated. It says, haven't been able to tune in for a while, but it's looking good. Thank you. I appreciate it. This piece, I'm finding that the devil is in the details. There's definitely little tweaks and challenges here as I'm getting further deeper into it. Now, I think I want to play with this. What I did was, instead of doing a hue, saturation, brightness, or playing around with adjusting the line art in that way, there's an option when you have an object selected that you can do a color fill. And if I turn it off, the line is black. If I turn it on, it just makes the color whatever color I have selected to paint with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to darken this a little bit. I could darken it significantly. I don't want to darken it significantly because that'll draw too much attention. I just want to darken it a little bit so that it feels a little bit. I just want it to fade into the stone a little bit more. And that works for me. So all that boring watching me sit there and do selections for like 10 minutes, hopefully this was worth it. This is what I was going for. Now the last question I have is whether to do the same effect to the helmet as well, and whether to do that to the sword and shield that's in the back. I almost feel like the sword and shield, I like it with the dark lines. I'm not sure whether I should do that with the helmet or just leave the helmet kind of the same treatment as the sword and shield. But that'll be for you guys to see coming up as I continue doing, working on this piece. I can't say for sure if I'll finish it between this week and next week. I'm going to keep pecking away at it. And yes, 47 says the colorized line art really does help, but now that you bring it up, that might he says that might hurt the composition. Um, yeah, I think that I'm probably only going to colorize the statue and probably leave the rest of the and then treat the helmet in the same way as I have the sword and shield in the background. In fact, I may even change the coloring. The main reason why it's lighter right now is so it'll come forward in terms of the composition. Let me see, where's my little thumbnail here? Yeah, it was more of the fact that I wanted it to stand out from the serpents. I wanted it to stand out from the cools of the serpents and the darker but warmer gray of I wanted it to stand out from the cools of the bed sheets, the warmer gray of the Gorgon. But I think that it's just going to be a matter of how to balance it so that the shield stands out from those things, but doesn't draw attention to itself. So it probably is just going to be more of a tonal thing. And I may actually go back to the sword and shield and color that line artwork as well. Instead of it being this bright stone, it'll probably be something where I'll make it kind of a darker, grayer, duller, make it just fade into the background more. So really the hard line art, the black line art is going to be probably the Medusa. And I'm also going to do the same thing with the sheets, where I'm going to make the line art of the sheets fade in. We'll see. Who knows? I may end up doing so much work with the line art that starts becoming distracting. So it's gonna take a little bit of playing with. So we'll see how it develops. It's nice. There's things for me to discover in this piece as I go. But yes, he definitely calls out, it's better to have a focal point. And right now I want the focal point to be these two. And in fact, making the man's face really the statue where you can't even, his face is kind of obliterated. And while he stands out color-wise, his deep features and details are kind of like blending in so that it will hopefully drive the focus a little bit more towards the Medusa. But yes, says, glad I was able to catch the tail end. I'm glad you made it too. So yeah, I think that's it for today. I feel like I made a lot of progress. We got a lot of progress here. I mean, the whole stone part was painted. Got those textures in there, the pock marks. Feels good to me. Feels good. I'm glad. Here, let me blow this up to full. You know what? That doesn't make it any bigger. I thought that it would somehow make it fill up the entire screen. And it does not. So, all right. Regardless, it was a good session. Thank you, everybody, for all of the feedback, the hanging out, the conversation. Always good times. If you enjoy these live streams, if you'd like to get 2 additional bonus live streams per month, if you'd like to get access to an exclusive Discord server where myself and fellow patrons share artwork, share process, give each other feedback, share, interesting things we find online about art, articles and, other YouTube videos. And we just kind of talk about process. It's a lot of animation talk in there. Even though I'm not an animator, there's definitely people that are on my Patreon who are animators. We have some animation talk in there too. Point being is that I have a Patreon. For as little as $2 a month, you can have access to that. You get 2 bonus live streams a month, and those bonus live streams, as opposed to these, those are 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 hours long or more, depending on any type of conversation we have. We have a session, we call it Art Book Study Group, where we dig into some of the best art books around and try to suck all the knowledge out we can, get access to all that, and able to read my comic books digitally online. For as little as $2 a month, head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you would like a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to pick up physical copies of my comics, if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods, a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It's an 8-issue series. It's broken up across 2 volumes. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. It's Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as Western. Both volumes have extensive back matter, character sketches, page layout, script excerpts. In fact, if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel, you can find there's page flip throughs where I lay the book out and flip through it so you guys can take a look and see how the book, what's inside the book before buying it. So you can get all those at amazon.jeremy.net. And there are links to all of these, the Patreon, the newsletter, the Amazon author pages, all links in the description for this video. So on that note, again, I hope you all have been happy and healthy and doing well. Thank you so much for the wonderful comments and conversation. That's it for now. Go be creative.